Hi, I'm Maddie,
And I'm Abigail, and this is
two writers.
Many Wrongs.
Nice. Look at that. Professionals. All right. So, what the heck are we doing? Why are we
Hmm.
here? What are we doing this for?
Yeah,
Because
I couldn't tell you. I'm here because you said, "Hey, let's start a podcast." And I
well, it's
went,
always my
"Who the
fault.
fuck wants to listen to us?" And we'll see who wants to listen to us.
I think people want to listen to us. I think we
Hmm.
have, we have, we have good knowledge.
We have plenty of failure to pull from and experience to, have at least some insight.
Yes. Yes. And maybe a little bit of moral support for people who are trying to write. So,
Yes.
the purpose of this podcast is to help other writers who are on their journey by showing them what it's been like for us on our journey.
That was a beautiful thesis statement.
Thanks, Professor.
No, yeah. I mean, we did the podcast because you have your TikTok, which is all about supporting writers, and then I have my blog, which is all about writing tips and sharing, writing struggles and whatever else. And so we figured we'd pool our knowledge and make a little potty pod.
A little potty pod. I
Yeah.
thought, why not? I mean, I think too, I have so much knowledge that I've learned over the years from my writing experience, from my
Hmm.
MFA program, from being in a fiction undergrad program. And I feel like I can help people by giving them this knowledge that I have and maybe just, keep some sort of record that I did learn these things.
Well, and I think that's what's kind of interesting about you and I too, is that I know we have a lot of people that, we know through the MFA program and stuff, but both of us have undergrad in some kind of fiction, creative writing,
Mhm.
whatever. And so it's not just that we had 2 years of grad school, it's, we have 6 years of learning about writing.
Mhm.
And then, I've been teaching creative writing for like 5 years now. So it's been a lot of refreshers on like those basics with my students and stuff. So, we're not published, unfortunately, yet. We're working on it. We're
We are
we're
trying so
on a
hard.
journey.
You have no
But
idea.
at least we have experience and kind of, know what we're talking about words on page wise. When it comes to things about publishing and agenting and whatever else, we'll bring in guests to give us some more
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, because we know a lot of people too that have
That's true.
experience that we can bring in. But I think that's a good segue to talk about who are we? Like what are we bringing to the table specifically? We kind of alluded to it, but
Mm.
Abigail, who are you?
Uh, Lord, if I know. Yeah, I mean, as far as writing wise goes, I am an amateur, which is kind of fun because it means that you're open to new experiences and stuff. But like I said, I've been teaching English and creative writing for like 5 years at the University of North Florida, so that's been very fun. And then I am a wife. I'm gonna be a mom soon. Um, but all of that kind of um, is not, I always hate to say like your life is fiction fodder, but I definitely feel like that influences all of my writing. Like I grew up in a
Sure.
really big family, so like I tend to write contemporary fiction specifically about families. So the short story that I have coming out later in the spring is like very family contemporary fiction kind of thing. Like it's a great sampling of what the rest of my writing is. And then I'm currently working on two different novels. So I'm really close to finishing the first one, and then hopefully we're going to get into those query trenches. And the second one, I just finished getting all my beta reader feedback. So we'll
Oh,
move on
cool.
to that. But Maddie, who are you?
I hate that question.
I right, thank you. You asked me that, and I was like, "Bitch, what?"
Mm, mm. So, well, I mean, that's the question. That's the question. People want to
Mhm.
know that if they come on here, they
That
want
is
to
the
know who we
question.
are. Um, so I am also not published, although I do want to point out that Abigail is actually published. It's just not coming out until spring.
Right, we're working on it.
So
Well,
she's
and we both have other
more published
stories
than I
that are,
am.
but you have some stuff from like school, right? Like I have two
No,
publications. Oh,
like I'm
oh,
literally never been published.
oh, I have been published 3 times. This
There you
this
go.
will be my third. Okay, continue. Sorry.
So you are you're further along than I am. I
All right.
did get a short story published in my undergrad that I
Okay.
pulled at the last minute,
Right.
because it was religious satire, and I thought it
Hmm.
would be offensive to my mother, and I really didn't want to like
That's
run the risk.
very, very sweet and considerate of you.
So who am I?
Hmm.
I have, let's see, where to start. So my bachelor's is in writing from the
Hmm.
University of Tampa. I was the outstanding graduate in writing
Aw.
for 2013, and I also got my MFA from University of Tampa as well.
Hmm.
And then I was going to go the professor route, but I decided not to because I didn't like the drama that I was seeing
Hmm.
behind the scenes with the MFA program and how professors were
Oh,
there.
yes,
And
specifically
then
with
I had,
UT.
yeah. But I also had a friend at the time who was a professor, and there was a lot of crap she was dealing with too that like I was like I could not handle that.
Hmm.
There's a lot of politicking and stuff, and I had a very comfy job. I was a senior director over the product writing sector. So
So you had your nice, fancy, respectable job, and then what happened?
I quit, and it felt good.
Yes, I'm so proud of you.
And there's a lot of reasons I ended up leaving. One of them was I'd finished my novel, and I
Hmm.
wanted to take some time to really focus on my writing and just give that a chance because I never really gave it a chance because I was working really hard because I was an executive. So I really didn't have time to do it. So I'm like, I saved up money, took that time off.
I also think one of the things we're going to talk about in a later episode, obviously, is like dedicating time to writing.
Yes,
And I know that like for myself, teaching adjunct, I will say UNF is absolutely wonderful to work for. My admin is so great and like really doesn't get into the political stuff, but I
good.
do get paid crap because it's adjuncting. But the nice thing is it gave me like free time to work on my writing and then working at the bookstore part-time because I work at an independent bookstore as well. Um, so but having the different part-time jobs is nice to like focus on writing.
Yeah.
But I would love to be able to take a year off and just focus on it because you have done so much this past year to move your writing forward. It's been very impressive to watch.
Well, it's very kind because I don't feel like I have done this much because my husband broke his freaking leg in like 2 or 3 months in, and that kind of
Hmm.
put a really big damper on things.
Yeah, a
But
shattered kneecap will do that.
I think I did a lot of like healing, like as a
Hmm.
person, like a lot of introspective healing,
Yeah.
and kind of went back to like what's really important to me.
Which I also feel like is really important for your writing is like realizing the motivations behind why you're doing it, which I also think is another good segue of how we got started writing.
Oh yeah,
Let's be honest, this podcast is going to be ranty and windy and whatever. So
we're writers.
we're writers. We're writers. We say many words when we could use few words.
Yes, that was something that technical writing taught me. I learned a lot about condensing my language because I
Hmm.
was very winded as a writer. I'd write paragraphs,
Hmm.
paragraphs, but
Yeah.
as a technical writer, you have to write it. It's all about word economy, like how to say
Hmm.
something with the least amount of words. So it did help
See,
me think about that in my writing.
right. And we'll talk about it later too when we talk about like our favorite mentors with writing. But my mentor in undergrad, like did this assignment. It's one of my favorite assignments to give to my students now is you have 500 words to tell a story. That's it.
Mm,
And students struggle with it so much because we want to elaborate, we want to give voice and character and setting and all the rest of it. And it's like sometimes you can't. And knowing what's crucial to a story and knowing what you need your audience to get
hmm.
is one of the most important skills I was ever taught. But anyway, how do we get started writing? I think that this is for most writers. Now, I could be overstepping here, but I think it's just one of those things that we've always done, you know. I started out, elementary school, we had the writing portable, and you could go in there and like type up your stories, and they would print it and laminate it for you and all that kind of stuff. And it was my favorite activity. Like, you'd go in there once a week, and I had like six of the little stories that I would, write and all that kind of stuff. And then you could draw pictures on them and make little picture books and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Um, I loved it. I started writing poetry because I had a lot of big feelings growing up, as one does, especially with divorced parents. That kind of comes with the territory. So I started doing poetry mostly. And when I got to Florida State, I was like, I want to do creative writing. And I think I want to focus on poetry. And I took my first poetry class summer semester and hated it. Hated my professor, hated every single poem that I would submit. He would be like, this really isn't concrete enough. And then he would be like, this is a little too abstract. And it's like, well, I don't know what you want from, so it got incredibly frustrating altogether. And then my first fall semester, I took my first fiction class with said teacher who eventually became my mentor. And I remember the very, very first day of classes, and I give him shit for this all the time, but he came in and he was like, very few of you will ever make it as writers. And I have a little bit of the like fuck you disorder where he said that, and I was like, oh, we'll see. And after that, like, he just became the most encouraging, most helpful, like wonderful teacher I'd ever had, and it really opened
mm,
me up to writing fiction, and writing short stories specifically. And after that, I wrote fiction from then on. The only time before that I had tried fiction is in seventh grade. I wrote my first novel, and it was so bad and it was so melodramatic, but I wrote it and I finished it and I felt really good about
there you
that.
go.
But yeah, so I think it's one of those things that like you don't choose writing, writing chooses you, you know? So I just have been writing for as long as I can remember, and, reading even before that. Talking to my mom the other day, and I was like, I always wanted to be a writer, and I didn't know if it was going to be fiction, poetry. There was a while that I wanted to be an investigative journalist. There was a while that I wanted to be like a photography journalist and work for National Geographic and all that kind of stuff.
That is so
Um,
cool.
right. So like I always wanted to write in some capacity, but it wasn't until college that I found fiction and loved it.
That's such an interesting journey to start off thinking
Yeah.
you were a poet.
Yeah, I mean, it really like it, I don't know. I all of my notebooks from middle school to high school were all poetry. My first publications were in poetry. Um, and it just, I really, really thought, this is what I want to do. And I know I can't make money at it, but this is what I want to study is my passion. And teachers make all the difference. I mean, they really, really do. Just the influence of those two teachers, one terrible and one fantastic, completely changed my path.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
So my story starts the way I feel like a lot of my stories start. Um, when I was in kindergarten, there
That's how a
was
lot of your stories start.
no, no.
Okay. Okay.
It's a story about me comparing myself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair. So when I
Yep.
was in kindergarten, I missed the first 2 or 3 weeks. I promise this is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the first 2 or 3 weeks because I had pneumonia. It
Hmm.
was kindergarten. So when I came back, like all the cliques had been had, and I was all by myself. And the one thing I had was that I was the new kid. So I was like, that was the only thing that made me special in the class was I was
Right.
the new kid. And then this teacher passed away, and the kindergarten students had to be split among the different kindergarten classes that already existed. So we got like a new batch. And so the teacher would always call like she would always call me. She would go, "Hey, new kid," to me when I was in class.
Ooh.
And I liked it because it was the only way that like differentiated me, made me special. So I liked it.
Hmm.
And then one day she went, "Hey, new kid." And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "You're not a new kid anymore. They're the new kids." And so I
Oh
immediately was like,
no.
well, what do I have? Like, I don't have
Who
anything.
am I?
Who am I? So this one girl in particular, there was one girl that had joined the class, and
Mm,
like she was the new kid, and everybody was like wanted to be her friend because she was the new kid, and everybody fawned over her. And I was like, what the heck? I was the new kid, and you guys like ostracized me. And then this new
hmm.
girl comes in. What's so special about her? And everybody fawned over her and thought she was so cool. So I like made her my mortal enemy. And one day she brought a book into school that she had written. She didn't write it.
Mm.
I know for a fact her mother wrote it. And it was a story about Jello. And it was
Okay.
really dumb, but everyone was like, "Wow, you're so smart. You're gonna be a writer. You're so good.
Mm.
And oh, you're gonna be a famous author one day." And I was like, "Pfft, I can write better than that. I've never written before in my life, but I can write a better book than that."
Hmm.
So then I wrote the book out of spite, and then I read it
Hmm.
back, and I was like, "This is really good. I really like this. This is really enjoyable."
Aw.
And then I fell in love with writing and kind of didn't really care about my rivalry anymore. I was more interested in making stories because I found that was really interesting.
Very
And then
nice.
I started dabbling with the poetry too.
Hmm.
The first poem I ever wrote, my grandmother hung up in her house. She had it printed
Aw.
and framed, and once she got past the age of like 8, it became really embarrassing. Every time I saw it, I was like, "I wrote that when I was 5. Can we please
Hmm.
take that down?"
Yeah.
So that's
So,
how I got started.
can I ask, how did you get started in your genre?
In fictions or sci-fi.
In sci-fi? Because I write contemporary fiction, but I know
Yes.
you like to build worlds.
I do like to build worlds. I don't know if that's true. I think I'm forced to build
Yeah.
build worlds. That's what the muses tell me I have to do, and
Hmm.
I'm just stuck with that. Um, I'm trying to remember. I think I got very caught up in science fiction. I fell in love with it when I was like 8.
Hmm.
I liked the possibility of the future and what the future held, I think, because I wasn't super happy as a child. So I was always thinking about the future. And that was like the thing I clung on to, that one day things could be really good.
Hmm.
And so science fiction was very attractive to me because it was like things would be better, there'd be more inclusivity, and there'd be new and exciting things over the horizon. And I thought that that was really cool. And the
Hmm.
way of that I found it particularly interesting was allegory, like seeing
Hmm.
science fiction take a story that was happening in current day and put it in a really crazy setting. And somehow it's like, that seems really ridiculous. Why would anybody get mad about that? And then you're like, oh, wait, weird.
So, I was about to say, I was an X-Men kid growing up, still am an X-Men kid, and I always go back to X-Men when people are trying to talk about, the power of fiction, or, specifically
Mm,
the power of like comic books and whatever else. And it's, it speaks volumes when we can take something like mutant rights and be like, no, it was a very, very clear allegory to
yes.
like, specifically segregation. So I love that you saw that as a child and could grasp that, because I watched it and I was like, I want to be a mutant. And it wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, discrimination.
Yeah.
Um, but also that's my white privilege speaking.
I was writing like little things here and there, and I had a little I had a little table with my name on it that I would sit in the closet of my grandmother's house, because my grandmother was the one who basically raised me as a kid. I was always over her house. And so I had a little table set up there, and I would pretend that I was a famous novelist.
Hmm.
And I'd sit at the table, and I don't know like how I thought novelists worked, but I'd be like, "I'm a professional novelist. You want me to write you a book?" And my stuffed animals would come up, and anyway.
Working on commission alone.
So I would write little things here and there, mostly like short stories or like little children's books, I guess would be more accurate to say what I was writing. But then I saw when I was in 5th grade, she had like a portfolio of like characters and like chapters that she was writing, and it was
Wow.
like anime fan fiction of Inuyasha, I think. And everyone would like go like, wow, she's so cool. She's writing a book. And then of course I got really jealous. And I was like, I could write a novel. I could write a novel like that. So
Hmm.
then I told you that's how all the stories
I'm
start.
sensing a theme. Yeah.
So then I started to create my own world, my own characters, and it kind of
Hmm.
evolved from there. And that's where Trace Orisu came from, who is the protagonist of my main novel that I have right now. I started her story when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
She was older then. I think that book that I wrote then, she was 24. In the book I'm
Hmm.
writing right now, she's 12. So I have her whole life mapped out. But I ended up writing that book, and I have read through the chapters that I wrote then. And it was probably the most painful experience of my life. And
Yes.
then
Yes, I could see that.
I started to rewrite it in high school, and I'd write it in my journal, and I would send chapters into my creative writing class,
Hmm.
and my teacher would write, remember me when you publish your first novel. And I don't remember her name, and I'm really sorry. I
No.
I only had her for a semester.
Uh-huh. That is
Uh,
still heartbreaking.
I know. I think about her all the time. I don't remember her name, but I do think about her, and I hope
Yeah.
that means something.
Yeah.
But the thing I remember the most about her was I wrote a personal essay for one of the assignments. Like there really wasn't any like you didn't have to write a certain kind of thing. You just had to turn in pages.
Hmm.
So I wrote a personal essay that was about my struggle with being a loner at school and not
Hmm.
having any friends.
Yeah.
I wrote a personal essay about it, and like it's very like introspective and like in my brain about
Hmm.
like the thoughts and anxiety I have and how alone I feel. And I put that in my personal essay and turned it to my teacher. And my teacher approached me and she's like, "This is really good and this is really important. I think you should read this to the class." And I was like, "I would rather die.
No.
I would rather die." Like,
Yeah.
especially because it was a mixed class. I was a freshman and there were senior guys who were on the football
Hmm.
team were in
Mm-mm.
that. And I'm like, absolutely not. And then she's
No.
like, what if somebody read it on your behalf? And I was like, okay. Because she would not let it go. She wouldn't let it go.
Okay.
So I was like,
Okay.
fine. So she read it. And like some like the most popular freshman girls were in there. And I was like,
Right.
oh my God. So they read it.
Did they know who it was that wrote it at the time?
Mhm.
Mm.
And so I was sitting in the back of the class. There's like the big hulking guys and the senior boys who look like men on the football team and popular girls in my grade. And not a single eye was dry at the end of the class.
Oh.
And then every single time I saw anyone from that creative writing class in the hallway, they'd be like, "Hey, Maddie, it's so good to see you."
Please
And
don't
that
kill
you,
yourself.
yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you're here.
The intense
Are
eye
you
contact is killing
okay?
me.
Yeah. And I feel
Oh
like
God.
I hate this so much. But,
Hmm. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it was a really good experience
Hmm.
to also feel my power as a writer,
Yeah,
that I
totally.
was able, like, it was very personal, but also like to
Hmm.
see that it affect people that I never thought would give a shit about me, and
Yeah.
seeing them brought to tears and affected them to a point they continued to seek me out
Hmm.
as things went on, because they'd pass me the hallway and then they'd stop and back up and be like, "Oh, hey, Maddie."
Oh. Hmm.
So
That's
I
really
think that
lovely.
that's how I learned that there's power in writing, and I've always
Hmm.
been attracted to power, so I was like, this is an avenue I can go.
Yeah, I mean, in our notes, you did say that you started writing for money, power, glory, which I completely understand. Money, number
Uh,
one thing that writers get.
number
Um,
one.
yeah, no, but that made me think of, I was talking about when I wrote my first novel in seventh grade, and I also gave it to my teacher, Kendra Lacey. I remember her name. She was
Wow.
lovely.
Okay. Flex.
But I specifically remember the very first like writing compliment I ever got was from her. And she like the biggest takeaway that she got is she was like, your pacing is really good. And I was like, what the fuck is pacing? I don't know what that means. And we sat down and like she explained it and whatever else. And
Yeah.
it was just one of those things that like I continue to hold near and dear to my heart of like, I'm really good at pacing a story. Um, And then later on in our graduate program, actually, I got my second writing compliment because, between seventh grade and grad school is when that happens. And it was that I'm really good at writing dialogue. And so, like, those are the two things that I am really proud of and like hold
Yeah.
up in my writing is I know how to pace a story and I know how to write dialogue that sounds realistic. Everything else, it's okay. But yeah, it made me think of like those teachers those are huge compliments that stick with us,
Yeah. That
so that,
propel you forward.
right. But like, so just the notion that you were like, oh, my writing can affect people and people who I never thought it would affect,
Yeah.
you're reading that to the other loners at school and all of them are like, oh, I know that feeling. But you're saying it to the football players and the cheerleaders and the podcast, the popular girls. Um, it's always surprising that like, no, 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 everybody can feel that and identify with that emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
that does remind me though of like a compliment that I got that like pro propelled me forward. Actually, it was from Jeff Parker.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
when I was an undergrad, I did an
Mm-hmm.
independent study with him as part
Mm-hmm.
of my internship. I was an intern for the MFA program we both went to
Right.
when it very first started.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also did, as part of it, I did an independent study with Jeff Parker, who was the director of the program at the time. And I gave him this piece that I wrote, and it was a piece that like it was very different than anything I've ever written, and it was very it was semi-autobiographical. So it was
Okay.
very, but it was magical realism.
Yeah.
And I gave it to him. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know. I don't know where this came from. I just wrote it.
Yeah.
And he read it. And he's like, he would, instead of like giving like written feedback, I would have to
Mm-hmm.
walk all the way to his office, which was
Okay.
like as far as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
They like hid him, like they were embarrassed of him.
Well.
So they like hid him all the way in the back, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
a long walk to get to his office. And he would just sit there, and he's like so cool. Like Jeff Parker's like so
He
cool
is,
and
yes.
chill. And he's like, "Hey, I was reading your work," and it was just like this one-on-one conversation with a chair, like in an armchair,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
show. And it was like very intimidating because I was an
Mm-hmm.
undergrad and he didn't have notes. He had notes on my paper, but I had nothing in front of me. And he's just like
Right.
making intense eye contact and being like, "Hey," he's like, what you're doing is you're transcending genre." And girl, I was 20 years old. I don't know what the fuck that meant.
No. No. But I bet your ass I Googled it and then was on cloud nine.
Yeah, yeah. I'm transcending genre. Oh,
But that
right.
is funny because that is something that continues to hold true with your writing today. Like you enjoy bending genres. So I love that.
Yeah, it was something that I hadn't seen in myself yet. How
Perfect.
did we meet?
So I graduated from the UT program for creative writing in June of 2018. You started the creative writing program at UT in June of 2018. So we only
That's right.
had one semester of overlap. Um, and I'm really trying to remember. I mean, I think it was just that we were staying in the same hotel, maybe, like how we crossed paths. But also I do have a thing for redheads, so I don't know if I just saw you and was like, her, she's gonna be my friend, done. Um, but I was friends with two dumb boys. And you had your little trio that you hung out with. So I feel like we just kind of naturally gravitated towards one another. And again, I mean, I'll say this till the day is long. I gaslit you into being my friend. Um, I hunted you down and forced you to do activities with me. The night of graduation, we all got drinks together. You met my mother. So,
I did.
you know, we got the opportunity that we're not going to talk about, but to work in a writing program in Florida. I immediately called you and was like, hey, do this with me because I can't do it alone. And I know that you'll do a good job at it. And again, hunted you down and forced you to be my friend. How did it go from your side of things?
So I was new. Obviously, it was my first time in the program. I had kind of gravitated to this little group. I don't know why. We just kind of sometimes you just get into a new environment and you just kind of with some people.
Hmm.
And we
Well,
were
and they were definitely the most in the nicest way possible. I was with the little weirdos of my class, and
I'm
you were with the little
always
weirdos of your class. So it
well,
very much made
yep.
sense that we would all gravitate towards each other.
Yeah. So definitely it was kind of like we kind of were in each other's gravity. We just kind of clung on to each other like,
Hmm.
hey, you're my people. And
Yep.
then we were always hanging out together. And then one day you approached us and like I in my head you adopted us because you were on your way out and you're like,
Yes.
hey,
Hmm.
you want to know the tea
I have a
about
tendency
everything
to
that's
do
going to
that.
do that?
Yes.
And so you kind of adopted us and you like told
Hmm.
us like, hey, watch out for this person and blah blah
Hmm.
blah and kind of like gave us all the lowdown. Like it was almost like you're like, we're leaving and we want our legacy to continue on. And we see you as the mini versions of ourselves. So here we go. And
That
like,
sounds so pretentious and shitty. If someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, you look like you could be my replacement," I'd be like, "Fuck you, I'm my own
no,
person."
but you didn't act like that. It wasn't like you said that. It was just
Okay,
like you're
okay.
like
Yeah.
you saw us as like
Yeah.
we were your predecessor. Like,
Yeah,
we were
absolutely. Well, and
you were gonna
especially
carry on your legacy.
because we were in a dying program, and my class was one of the larger classes that our program had seen in a long time. And we had been told throughout the 2 years that we were 2.5 years that we were there, you guys have brought so much life to the program, and you guys are, so like rambunctious, but in a good way, and all that kind of stuff, that it was almost like, I want this to continue because I want our program to be able to survive. So it was very much in that
Yeah.
hope
It
that,
felt like sequely. Like
hmm.
you were like you had the main TV show and then there was
Yeah,
going to
you're
be
the spinoff.
or the spin-off show
Hmm.
and but it's like it's the same format. It's these three
Right.
weirdos in the
Yeah.
program and you like
Yeah.
kind of like passing the torch like here you go.
Hmm.
And that's what I felt like and specifically would talk about how cool we thought you were. We're like, oh, she's so cool. I hope she wants to be our friend. And so like
It
that
is
was
so
kind of
funny
it.
to me when people think I'm cool. Like, I
Well,
don't know
come
what
on,
it is.
you were like the older sisters, like, hey, you
Hmm.
guys want some cigarettes? Or like, I don't know, like
Never.
I know you
Yeah.
never, but like you were like cool and like
Yeah.
showing us stuff that like we weren't
Hmm.
supposed to know, but you were gonna tell us
Yeah.
anyway, and like
Yeah.
cool, like
Yeah.
yeah. You would take us over into like a side room where like nobody was and like, so my our like second year here or like whatever
Hmm. Hmm.
it was
Yeah.
cool. Like, that's cool.
I appreciate that. That's really nice.
And
The
then you
funny thing
reached out to
is,
me again.
yes.
You reached out to me again, and I was like, oh, Abigail's calling, and I really thought like you're like a more of an adult than I am and
Hmm.
like more put together than I am. And so when you called me, I was like a little nervous. I was like, do I need to put my blazer on? Like, she's calling. What could it be about? And then you were very serious on the phone. And I was like, yes, ma'am, of course. I would absolutely. I'm so honored, ma'am. And then we started working together. And I really thought when we first started working together on that thing, that you thought that I was like a fucking ditz.
No, no, never. See, and that's so funny because from my point of view, I was thinking like, I have to make this opportunity sound really awesome, even though I know it's going to be a shit show. Because if she knows it's going to be a shit show, then she's never going to join me. So I feel like both of us were like on our best behavior in the beginning. And then eventually we just looked at each other and we were like, so this is a shit show, right? Like, right? And I feel
Right.
like that's what really bonded us together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And then on top of that, like, I had spent so long looking for a writing community, and going into academia, I really thought like, oh, school is where I've always found my people. Teaching, I'll definitely find my people. And I just didn't. Teaching was
Mm.
very, very isolating. The other professors stayed in their offices. Like there wasn't really a mentor program. There wasn't a lot of interaction there. And so grabbing you as, I mean, I call you my life jacket all the time because you saved, like I don't even mean it in
Oh.
like trying to like, I don't know, pump you up or whatever, but like you
No,
saved my
please flatter
writing.
me.
Yes, you did. You saved my writing by inviting me to be a part of your writing group.
Oh,
Because you had built this beautiful community of people, from the graduate program, but also from outside of the graduate program,
yeah.
and invited me to be a part of it. And it has completely changed. my writing career.
Yeah, I mean, that was my lifeline was this,
Mhm.
and I really thought because we started it in 2020, and I really thought here we are in 2024, and we have more people than ever
Mhm.
in it, and I really thought like this can't last long. People just
Yeah.
kind of fade away, but
Yeah.
there's so many people that continue hanging on. Of course, there's people that aren't there anymore, but we kept bringing new blood in, and that sounded so creepy,
Well,
but like,
no. Yes.
but
Yeah.
it's still going strong, and I love
Mhm.
that. It really means a lot to me to go
Well,
to that.
and it's nice because I know you've brought people in, I've brought people in. I feel like other people in the group, we feel comfortable enough to allow it to grow. It's not some sacred thing that we're like, no, 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 like this is just ours.
Yeah.
It's always a very much like the more the merrier kind of thing, which is great. But I feel like it's really nice because it's very low stakes, very low pressure. So for the listeners, our writing group meets at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and we literally just sit with our cameras turned off and muted and write together. And then we'll do hourly check-ins, give each other encouragement, talk through ideas. Um, but just knowing that somebody's on the other side of the screen while you're writing and they're writing, number one. And then number two, the pressure of I have to put this time aside because other people are counting on me. Because that was always my hardest thing when it came to my writing, is
Mm,
I always felt like I could be spending my time doing something at the time it was like more worthwhile because I didn't
yeah.
value myself or value my writing in that way. And you guys have really helped to give me that value of writing.
'Cause you see a bunch of other people who are also doing the same thing,
Hmm.
and I think that's really valuable. I also
Yeah.
think I try to make it so there's no pressure to
Hmm.
achieve a certain page count. It's
Yeah.
just show up and do something that's related to writing. Like, it doesn't even have to be writing, so we do reading too. I think
Hmm.
that's all valid use of your time because that's research.
Yeah.
But that's something I always try to do. I try to make sure that we celebrate every
Hmm.
victory. Someone's like, "I only wrote 100 words," and it's like, "That's 100 more than I wrote."
Yeah. Well, and it's even nice because, we have people who don't come to the group for months at a time,
Mhm.
and then we'll show back up and we're like, hey, welcome back. What are we working on today? You just need to read? That's fine. Go ahead and read. And it's just such a nurturing environment, especially I think when a lot of us through our undergrad and our graduate careers and read it, like even those who didn't have a formal education read like books about writing. The number one thing that gets hammered home to writers is you have to write every single day, and if you don't write every single day you're not a real writer and blah blah blah. And it's just a lot of pressure to put on yourself in this creative endeavor. And so it's always nice having the writing group to be like, at least I'm going to write today. And if I don't write today, at least I'm being around people who want to talk about writing and want to be encouraging and, can refill that creative bucket.
Yeah, and you're sitting in the space that you need to be
Hmm.
in to write. I think part of the attitude for this writing group came out of the fact that it was born in 2020
Yeah.
when a lot of us were so creatively drained. It was predominantly a support system of like,
Hmm.
"Hey, I really love writing, but I literally just cannot right now."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's
2020 was interesting
carried
because
over.
that was the year I finally got my shit together for my first novel and sent it out to beta readers. So
That's pretty
2020 was, I
exciting.
feel like it's a big turning point for a lot of our writing careers of like, okay, I can't work. I can't do anything else. I have all this time on my hands. What is actually important to me? You know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I had a hard time because that was the year I graduated. I graduated that summer,
Hmm.
and, we didn't have a graduation,
Yep.
and so that was really hard to, like, I
Hmm.
didn't actually graduate. It was just, like, a Zoom call that was like, "You graduated," and I closed it, and I was like, that didn't
That
feel very exciting.
sucks.
And my last mentor I had there really hated my writing and was very clear that they didn't think I had any talent. And
Hmm.
that, like, the thing they were very critical of was my character development, which is something
Hmm.
I have always been told I'm really good at character
Hmm.
development. They're like, your character's so real, blah, blah, blah. And she told me that like I didn't understand how to write characters and that I needed to like go back to the beginning and learn how to write
Terrible.
characters. And so like I was like the one thing I knew I could bank on was the thing that she was saying I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And uh it was just it it shook my world, and I didn't write for, like, a year and a half because I was so heartbroken, and that's another thing with mentors is mentors can break you too, and
Yeah,
it did. It broke me for a whole year.
I've literally been taking notes on my little snail notepad this whole time about future topics and things like that too. Because while we have our list of future topics,
Sure.
I also, I think it's important to keep building that. And as you tell these stories, I'm like, oh, I have a story about that as well. So yeah,
That's a good idea.
yeah. I mean, it is so easy to be discouraged in creative pursuits, but the thing that I find so surprising is that it is almost equally easy to be encouraged by the right people. And having you and having our writers group in my life has been so much encouragement for me to keep going and keep writing and working on
Yeah.
these creative endeavors.
Yeah, exactly. You need to let those voices be louder.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Um, all right. Well,
Well, one more thing.
yeah, one more thing.
What is your favorite thing about me?
Yeah. So when you brought up like doing this podcast together, I have never felt like I'm not super comfortable just like putting myself out there a lot of the times. But I know that I can trust you. And while I don't know if that's like my favorite thing about you, I know that your heart is always in the right place. And I know that you always have your not just your friends, but your fellow writers' backs, even people who are not like in your friend circle, you always look to cultivate the artist in people. And I think that's one of my favorite things about you because when we were working on that project together, when we were in school together, as we continue to go through writing group together, like you are just such an encouraging person, specifically when it comes to our creative pursuits. And then as we've become friends, it's obviously encouragement in every other aspect of my life. And I've been through plenty of struggles.
Oh, we
Especially in the
all
past couple of years when we
oh
have
my
been like
god.
friends.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of my favorite things about you is you're very empathetic.
Wow. That was such a
Yeah.
nice answer. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
I
welcome.
That's something I really strive to be
Yeah.
is I feel like maybe I'm not the best writer, but
Hmm.
I know what it's like to be a writer, and I wanna at least make other writers feel comfortable and to explore that
Yeah.
part of them.
No, you're wonderful at creating a safe space for people to explore their creative
Good.
pursuits.
That makes me really happy. That makes me really happy because that's I try. That's the goal.
Yeah.
All right. Abigail. Abigail, how to count the ways.
Oh,
I
yes.
I love how put together you are. I know, and you don't think you are, but, like, this I I feel like I'm a mess
Hmm.
when I'm very, like, scatterbrained. My brain has lots of thoughts,
Hmm.
and I miss most of them. I forget what I'm saying half the time, but you're like you keep a schedule, you know what needs to be done,
Hmm.
you know what good questions need to be asked. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, let's create a podcast." And you're like, "Okay, but we need a platform that we're gonna be doing. We need to have this, we need to," and, like, you keep me grounded,
Oh,
and
I'm
that's
your
really
anchor,
you're my anchor.
weighing you
Yes.
down.
No, no. You keep me grounded
Yeah.
because like, I tend to, like, get, like, caught up in things, but you
Hmm.
help remind me of, like, the more solid things that I need to focus on,
Hmm.
which is good too as far as, like, my accomplishments too. Because I get since I have all these ideas, and if I don't meet those expectations and also you making comment some sassy comments sometimes about, like, "Oh, I'm gonna work on this project or this project," and you're like, "Wow, that's a lot of projects." It kinda makes me realize, like, maybe I shouldn't be working on these many projects, but I think
I
you're very down to earth and
thank you.
very put together, and that helps me kind of get out of my, like, crazy wind
Mhm.
scattery
I'm gonna be super honest. I think it's the difference between one, an ADHD brain versus a not ADHD brain, and two, my brother and my mother are both ADHD, so I have spent the majority of my life being like, "That's amazing. let's make it an actual reality. How do we take this great idea that you are like already spitball and make it an actual fucking thing? So I appreciate that because I feel like that's a skill that I've been working on for a
Yeah,
really, really long time to like stay organized, get it done, like, especially just to bring it back when it does come to writing, the thing that I heard over and over and over and over and over again is like, you're not an actual writer until you finish something. And that's how I always felt about projects. So
hmm
I love that I can help you get there.
yeah, you're very grounded, and I look for that sometimes because there's so many things we've done
Hmm.
that would have never happened if it was just up to me. Like the proposal,
Hmm.
that would not have happened without you.
Aw.
This podcast would have never happened without you.
See, and I think that's why we balance each other out so nicely is that while
And we're
both of us,
Libras,
we are Libras, we are.
balancing each other.
Yeah, yeah. But
Love
like
that.
you help me be brave with these creative pursuits. I would have never applied to the workshops we've applied to. I would have never gone to AWP. I would have never done any of these things because I am so afraid to be on my own and to be myself kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that like you push me to get out of my comfort zone and then I push you to like follow through on that.
Right.
So
I picture it more
hopefully,
like I'm like holding a balloon. I'm like, oh look, and I start floating away, and you grab me by my ankles, and you're like, wait,
yeah,
wait, let's figure out how to do this so you don't fly away.
that's so funny. See, and I look at as you're stepping on the gas pedal and I'm controlling the steering wheel. So, Maddie, what are the main projects that you are focusing on right now?
So I have a novel that I finished. I have a very complete draft that's done already, but I'm going through a second round of edits to kind of shuffle everything into place and make it pretty, and then sending it off to a beta audience before querying later this summer. It is a space opera, a feminist queer space opera. So I'm excited to finally be done with that because I've been working on it for like a decade. So
Hmm.
I'm really ready to get rid of it. And the other projects I'm working on, I have a poetry collection that's about my first marriage that I'm currently querying around to try and get published, as well as several short stories in a short story collection I wrote as part of my master's thesis. Also sci-fi, also feminist, more psychological thriller, but they take place in the same like sci-fi universe as my novel. And those are my main
Very cool.
projects. What
Nice. I
about
love
you?
that. Right now, so I also have been working on my novel for a long time. I started it in 2015 with like the very, very base draft. Um, and then put it away for about 2 years and then came back to it at grad school and finished it for my thesis. And then, like I said, 2020 is when I finally like got a good enough draft together that I sent it out to beta readers. So I am currently finishing putting all the beta reader notes into this draft. And cleaning up some continuity things that I want to change based on the beta reader feedback.
Hmm.
And then I'm hoping to query that to agents. And hopefully, this is the year that I kind of get started on that querying agent, putting out on submission, getting published path is what I'm hoping. Um, and then once I finish, because as we talked about, I'm a very like one thing and then the next and then the next kind of person. Um, Once I finish that, I have my second novel, which has been sent out to beta readers, that I am not touching right now. Like I got all the feedback and then just have set it aside. So once I finish the first novel and start sending it out to agents, then I will allow myself to go back and start compiling those edits for the second novel. And then I have a third novel that's been knocking around in my brain, but
Oh,
I don't let myself write anything until I have finished a the project that's in front of me. And my philosophy behind that is if it's a good idea, it will stick. And this idea has stuck for about 4 months now. So I might allow myself to start writing some notes and things like that.
allow
Once I
yourself,
finish. I
girl.
mean, we've talked about this. Like I have to work in these steps,
That's fine. That's
or
fine.
else I'll get lost in it. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on. And then, just trying to send out some short stories here and there, trying to get something on my resume, for agents to look at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And what book are you reading right now?
I am reading this Jodi Picoult book. That's so good. And yes, her name is Pico, not Picoult, which I spent my entire life saying wrong, and I only learned it on TikTok.
It is so
But it's
good.
called A
I'm
Spark of
literally like
Light.
30 pages in and I am obsessed with this book. Um,
Wow.
it's phenomenal. So I'm reading that, and then I'm audiobooking Powerless, because it's a really popular romantasy right now. And working at the bookstore, it's nice to be able to talk to the customers about it.
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting. It's cool. It's a little like Hunger Games meets Graceling meets a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. What about you? What are you reading?
So I have two books that I'm reading right now. They're very different vibes. Called The Rose That Blooms in the Night,
Okay.
by Ali Michelle. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a poetry collection. So this is something I read. I read like a few pages when I go to bed at night. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
a nice wind down of
Love
the
that.
day. Um, this is The World We Make by N.K.
Ooh.
Jemisin, which is a sequel to the book The City We Became,
Mm-hmm.
which is about basically the different boroughs of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
They come to life and embody certain people.
Hmm.
So
That sounds awesome.
there's a person that's called Manny. He's Manhattan. There's
Nice.
a woman named Brooklyn, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's all really interesting and it's alternating.
Queens.
And well, her name isn't Queens, but
Ugh.
there's a Queens as well. And this one's signed, so
Oh, I love that. That's been the nicest part about working at an independent bookstore is that I've been collecting signed editions of books, and it's been awesome.
I love New York City. New York City
Hmm.
has my heart. I want to live there with all my everything in me. So reading this
Yeah.
like personification of the boroughs
Uh-huh.
is just like delightful.
Hmm.
Um,
Sorry.
but I am enjoying
I
it.
love
There's
that.
things that I don't quite enjoy about this book, but I am a big fan of N.K. Jemisin, so I'll always pick up her books.
Very nice. I love that. Jodi Picoult is one of my always authors. I don't care what it is. I will pick it up and read it. I love her. Do we want to just give some highlights of like what listeners can expect? Um,
Sure,
so
I
in
love to hear that.
Yeah. In upcoming episodes, we are hoping to talk about our MFA program and if we thought it was worth it, how it has affected our writing and either encouraged us or discouraged us. We're coming up going to be talking about querying for agents and submitting short stories and poems. How do we find the journals that we want to submit to? How do we write a cover letter for those journals or for agenting? We're also going to be talking about different writerly groups, like going to AWP or participating in National Novel Writing Month. So we have a lot to talk about when it comes to writing. And again, a lot of it's going to be talking about our failures and what we have learned from them along the way.
Absolutely. I'm also going to AWP in February. It's a couple weeks away. It's not that far.
Yeah, so you'll have to give us a full review.
We'll low down. I'll
Yeah.
do on the scene little reports.
Oh my gosh, yes, I love that.
We'll see.
I'm Abigail,
And I'm Maddie, and this has been
two writers.
Many Wrongs.